Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts, AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everyone, we're back. We are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses the things that schools may not have prepared you for. As always, I'm AJ. Jason sitting across me. Jason, how you doing?
Doing great, AJ.
So Jason, we are on episode 24, I believe. And again, I asked you something similar to this on a previous episode, but after listening to the past podcasts episodes, I asked you before, what did you learn about yourself? What's something that you've learned about me over the past 20 whatever episodes?
Well, you are quite different than me. That is the number one thing I've learned.
That is
you and
for
I took
sure.
different tacks towards life in college, but we kind of ended up at the same place, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I would say yours. So I knew you were a lawyer. You had that lawyer background, but I guess I didn't put it together that I've learned that you're very calculated in your response. You like to qualify things. You think things through. You want to make sure everybody has all the information so there's no assumptions being made. And I think that really comes from the lawyer side. I was not expecting that. And it's been pretty fun to see and fun to joke on, too.
Well, I'll go back to you for a second there. I could tell you were kind of a more laid back type of guy, But most of the time when you find somebody who became a professor in college, right, you're assuming that, oh yeah, but on the academic side, they were really, they kept their nose to the grindstone all the time and stuff. And I guess that's not the case.
That is not the case. No, I did what I had to, and I didn't, which, I mean, like I said before, I'm strategically lazy. I'm going to do what I need to get where I need to be, but not do too much, because if you do too much, then people expect more out of you.
Well, it worked for you, man. You need to teach classes on your strategy towards doing little and getting more.
I should have like a certificate for that.
That's awesome.
Well, in today's episode, we're going to follow that trend. We're going to continue to have fun. We're going to be talking about spring break.
Oh, yeah.
So I know some of you are, depending on when this is coming out or when you listen to this, you may be thinking about what you're going to be doing for spring break. Or getting the initial plans made up, or you may not be doing anything. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the week or weeks, if that's the case for you, and talk about, how to get the most out of it, what not to do, the things that you have, the options that you have, those kind of things. Does that sound good to you, Jason?
Sure thing. But before we jump into that, remind everybody, visit our website, Reschool'd, that's Reschool with a D, not an ED.com. Check us out on the socials, Reschool'd Pod. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also, our YouTube channel that's getting kicked off or really growing here lately. And on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever, right? Like us, get notifications when we drop a new episode. And then lastly, make sure you're reaching out to us. We want to hear from you guys. We need to understand what you want us to talk about. The things that interest you are the things that we're going to address. So, like I say, reach out.
And those successes. Again, we love to hear those successes, and we'll celebrate those with you. Quick question of the day, and I don't know what to expect on this one. I can almost assume. Most memorable spring break. What's your most memorable spring break?
Well, a true dud in undergraduate, I did not have any memorable spring breaks. I probably spent the majority of my spring breaks either early on studying or later on working. But I did have a couple of memorable ones in graduate school.
Okay, well, go on. So let's elaborate.
Yeah, so one spring break in law school, we went on one of those spring break cruises.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was one of those Carnival Caribbean cruise type things. Sat by the pool, drank mixed drinks, stuff at night. They had a dance off competition by the pool in the center, and back then I could cut a little, cut a rug a little bit. So I actually won the Mr. Sexy Legs competition, right?
Oh, good grief.
I was like a celebrity for like 3 days. Everybody was taking pictures with me. It was awesome. I must be in about 100 people's spring breaks albums. So
that is memorable right there.
Yeah. So that's 20 years ago, but
No, I did spring break from high school all the way through college, and I loved it. And I think probably the most memorable thing was when we first started going down there. I was 16, 17, just got my driver's license. And back then, we didn't have GPS wasn't as accessible as it was now. So we didn't have a GPS in our car.
Oh, I remember those days.
The only way you can get somewhere is you had to print out the MapQuest step by step.
Oh yeah, I was the king of that, and I could miss a turn. Oh my gosh.
Well, and the first 5 are how do you get out of your neighborhood?
Yeah.
And you're like, what's the point of that? But anytime we went to spring break, we just decided, we're not going to do it. We're gonna find our way. And so, to give you an idea, I lived in South Georgia, and we would go to Panama City Beach, and our driving tips, our driving directions were go south till you hit water, and then take a right. And it would take us
good direction. That is good advice.
Good directions. It would take us 7 hours for a 4.5-hour trip, but we knew those directions. And we just kept going south until we hit water and then take a right.
Oh, you go too far, you hit one of the keys, you've gone too far.
That is completely true. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. I remember doing going to one of the restaurants, clubs, bars, whatever you want to call it. They had a foam party where they shoot suds everywhere.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
never done that. I want to do that. I wanted to do that.
So much
Those
fun.
days have passed.
So much fun, though. Well, let's get into our main topic, and I'm going to surprise you a little bit here. We actually have a new segment on this show, and so let's start it. I actually created a drop for this, so let's see how this works. All right, class, books away. It's time for a pop quiz. So this is a pop quiz for you. I want you to let's see if you can give me the top 10 spring break destinations. See if you can list them out. And we're going to grade you, too.
Top 10. All right.
Uh-huh.
I got to start with Daytona Beach.
All right.
Second, I got to go to Panama City.
All right.
Third, I'm going to go to Disney World.
All right.
Well, I'm sticking around the Florida part, aren't I? Next, I'm going to go with, let's say, what's a famous beach in California? Laguna, Sunset.
Okay.
Some California beach. I'm just gonna have to stick there.
Well, generalize it.
Yeah, somewhere south of LA, somewhere San Diego-ish.
All right.
And Disneyland.
Disneyland, so the one in California.
Actually, let me drop it back one because I know the most visited spot, not Disney World, on the East Coast is Myrtle Beach. So Myrtle Beach makes my top 5 choice.
All right. So top 5 wise, you didn't get any of them.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Top 10, you got 2.
Okay.
So out of top 10, you got a 20.
Well, enlighten us. What are they?
So here is the top 10 according to U.S. News. So number 1's Cancun.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2 is Miami Beach, Florida. Number 3 is South Padre Island, Texas. 4 is Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. 5 is Jamaica. 6 is Bahamas. 7 is Punta Cana, Mexico. Number 8 is Playa del Carmen, Mexico. 9 is Daytona, and 10 is Panama City Beach.
Interesting. Well, Cabo, you could give me that one. Well, you did
say Southern
California.
California. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually had a question mark, so we give you half credit on that one. So you got a 25.
And I wasn't thinking outside the U.S. I know I should have been thinking international, but yeah.
Well, those are the top places travel-wise for spring break. But let's get into just spring break in general. So we know spring break is typically a week. Obviously, it's in the spring. That is free of classes. No classes. Typically, depending on the professor that you have, they don't give you work. Most of them don't give you work. Some of them do. But it's just more or less a time for a break from all the monotony of classes during the spring semester. Very much like what Thanksgiving break would be during the fall. What are some options that students could have for college spring break?
Well, I think your natural options are you continue what you're doing, right? You continue to prepare for what's coming for the end of the semester. You know, things happen really fast there at the end of the semester. So my first couple of years in college, I used it to prepare, to catch up on things, to get ready for the end of the semester. my last couple of years, I used it to work, right? It was time where I could earn a little extra money by working an extra shift or two in the restaurant. And I also did banquet setup and stuff, and there was always events and stuff I could do during the week as well. So that type of thing. So work would be the second option. And then something I never did in college, but wished I had the opportunity. You can travel, right? You can. Now, I will say this. There are ways to travel that don't involve drunkenness, partying, going to the beach and debauchery and ending up with a terrible tattoo that's, something written in an Asian language that you don't know, that doesn't say what you think it does, yeah. Right? So, come back without piercings. Well, one thing and this isn't offered in all schools, but a lot of schools are going to it. These modular type experiences where you can go either somewhere in the United States for a study. You can do it at the institution and just sit in a classroom for a week. You can travel to some destination location inside or outside of the country and take a class. Normally it involves you have to write a paper, as part of it as well, but you sit in class and you visit places and you have lecturers that talk about different things, and you can get anywhere from 1 to 3 hours of academic credit in just a 1 week period. I've actually taught a few of those myself. I was the one for students who didn't have the ability, money, time, whatever, to travel and go somewhere else. So I was the home base one at a school where I taught, in the securities law, right? And the students got an hour or two worth of academic credit to hear me talk about that for 6 hours a day for a week. So I know they should have given them 10 hours of academic credit for staying awake for that, right?
No kidding.
But so those are all of those are good options, right? You've got, rest, relaxation, preparing, work, taking something's type of travel course or home-based course for academic credit. And then you got the fun thing, the partying, right? So like I said, try to balance it out. You got any ideas, anything you did or have an idea about?
Yeah, I kind of, when I saw this question, I kind of broke it into 3 categories. One, you do nothing different. So you're either going to stay at home, work, or study as if you're just going to school anyway. Then you have the travel side. And then you have the volunteer and philanthropy side. So a lot of times you go somewhere, which can also include the travel side, because a lot of times you go to different places, especially if you go on like a missions trip. I know they do those a lot during spring break. And then again, I didn't know about the classes being in spring break. None of my colleges actually offered that. So I didn't know that was actually a possibility. That's a really cool thing to do, though, to get those credit hours in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it was a great thing for students. Lots of them used it for fun trips. Like in my MBA program, lots of people went to the Virgin Islands and went on a leadership. You basically live on a boat for 8 days.
That sounds great.
And you get credit for that. Other people went to foreign countries and traveled, all over the world. It was ridiculous. And then, I did the local modules again, same program where I went back and taught those a few years later. Right, where it's home-based stuff where you learn about some topic of your choosing type thing. That was the first time I'd ever seen it, and then I realized that they do that in some other schools. But you brought up something interesting. You said volunteering.
Yeah.
That is an excellent option. Building the resume, building the career, personal development. You could volunteer at a Habitat for Humanity or something like that where it's, you're doing good for the community. Or you could volunteer for something that's a professional development thing, right? A skill-based learning thing. One thing that has come about in recent years, I deal a lot with student internships, or these micro internships that are short periods of time, 1 month or less. Well, I've heard or seen where people do these little micro experiences during spring break.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, you go and you shadow. It's one of the things, you're donating your time in a way. It's like an internship. You're just shadowing. You're just observing. You really don't get involved. You don't have time to get involved. But just seeing things you haven't seen before, right? It's more of a mentorship type scenario.
We actually had something like that in my high school. We had 2 weeks. I can't remember what it's called. I want to say it was called like CIP. But it was 2 weeks where you didn't go to high school. You actually shadowed somebody in the profession that you were thinking about. So that way when you get to college, you'll know a little bit more about it and you can decide if that's really the route you want to go.
Mm-hmm. And there are programs out there that help you find these things.
Yeah.
And so even if your school doesn't offer it, your high school, your college, your graduate school, you can do these things with other institutions. I did one of my study abroads during the summer with an institution that basically just partnered with academic institutions. It wasn't an academic institution itself. So you'll find these programs that do these types of things. You may have to do the legwork, take it to your registrar's office, try to figure out what courses could transfer in and how you could, use this experience for academic credit. But usually there's a way, whether it's through directed study or directed research or something like that, or study abroad course credit type thing. So my advice to anybody out there listening to this and you're like, well, my school doesn't have that, and doesn't mean you can't make it happen. I mean, I'm always impressed by the students who go out there and find opportunities and bring it back and make it happen for themselves when otherwise an opportunity didn't exist. That's one, it's good life practice, right? You're creating opportunities for yourself. But two, it could be fun. It could be a one-time, once in a life experience.
Yeah, you can get two things out of the way. You can check two things off your list, because a lot of times with the volunteering, you get the volunteer side, which, like you said, is the resume builder, if you will, and then a lot of times these are travel, so you still get the travel component too. So that really takes two of the things off your list. A lot of times students struggle with trying to figure out. Sometimes the decision's made for them. Sometimes they have to do certain things, but a lot of times they struggle with what to do. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to just go through not so much the options, we just did that, but the motivations behind spring break. Like, what are some possible motivations? Because we've talked about motivations in a past episode too, and the importance of them. What are some motivations that students have when it comes to spring break?
So, the school sees it as, like I say, they call it a break for a reason, right? So perhaps
it's a break for students and teachers.
Yeah, so perhaps you need a break from the academic rigor. Maybe you should kick back and relax. And whatever that means for you, some people relax by traveling. Some people relax by sitting back and doing nothing, right? You may use it as a time to prepare. Okay, so if you're feeling behind, you're like, how do I keep up with this? My classes are burying me so far behind. Well, you got 1 week free to catch up, right? 1 week free to say, this is doable.
It's almost a reset.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way I see it, right? So those are obviously two motivations. Do you have others?
Well, I mean, so you have the rest side, reset side. A lot of times, again, we've said this before, some students use that time to continue working. So the money side of it, they're able to get more money because they're not in class. Some students it's the party time. I mean, they don't care about the rest. They're gonna get 5 hours of sleep each night if they're lucky. Wake up with a hangover and do it again the next day for the next 7 days until they get home, and then they come to class with a hangover. But that's what they're looking forward to. Some, again, with the volunteering side, some people look for it as a time to give back. And then lastly, and I think this one's an in general one, it doesn't matter which option you go with, but just spending time with friends and family.
Yeah.
Whether it's spending time at home with your family and the friends who didn't travel, or traveling with friends, or any of those kind of things. So to me, it's really, what are you trying to get out of spring break? That way you can figure out what options that you have within that motivation.
Yeah, that's something we've kind of overlooked for a little bit. Lots of times you go to schools that are not close to where your friends and family are. You may travel all the way across the United States, right, and go to a college that's nowhere near anything you're familiar with. Spring break might be the time that you get to go back and be with those people, right, or have those people come to you. So to, that social aspect of, rejuvenation. But, yeah, all of these are great motivations. And one of them you mentioned about, spending the week on a spring break destination and drinking a lot and things like that. There's a finite period of time in your life where that's something you can do regularly. And
yeah, if we do that now, we're just creepy.
Well, yeah, you're creepy and you might have a problem, right?
Yeah, slightly.
There might be an alcohol or substance abuse problem there. So, but there is a time in your life where you can go and do things like that, and the environment's, kind of conducive to it, and you can have people to look out for you and you look out for each other type scenario. And as long as you're not breaking any laws. I never endorse that, right? Because
Of course.
you get caught doing something.
It'll ruin your career.
Yeah, it ruins your career. But as long as you stay within the confines of the law, definitely no drinking and driving, nothing that puts anybody else in danger.
Yeah.
That is a valid motivation and a valid goal to have that type of experience.
Well, I would say all these things that we've talked about so far have been really the benefits of spring break, what you can get out of it. But what are some disadvantages to spring break for students?
Well, we started down that track just a second ago, right?
Yes.
Oftentimes it's this gang or group mentality. People fall into the idea that I need to go somewhere and just be my craziest self. And you make decisions that don't turn out well, or you fail to take care of yourself and something bad happens, right? I mean, whether it's a scenario where you get caught doing something illegal, possession of a substance, or, underage drinking, or even worse, drinking and driving type scenario, any of those things, long-term negative impacts. I've dealt with a good bit of that before when I was, a legal assistance attorney. And the types of trouble that people get into in these scenarios are wide and broad. Unfortunately, I had to be involved in a lot of, when I was a prosecutor, I was involved in a lot of sexual assaults that happen in these types of scenarios, right? And, it's more dangerous and it's more common than people realize. People don't go into it thinking that, hey, I'm putting myself in a situation where I could be taken advantage of, or like I say, somebody with me could, be taken advantage of or something like that. So,
yeah, you have to really be careful with who you're around from just a general sense, so the public, and then also who you're around with your friends, because you really need to understand who you are as a person and what you stand for before you get into those positions, like before you get into those scenarios. So for me, I'm somebody that I do not do anything when it comes to driving under the influence. Like that's as far away from my personality, because I know what kind of devastation it could cause, and I don't put up with that whatsoever. And me knowing that in myself, I was comfortable with also knowing that if I was presented with one of my friends trying to do that, I would be the one that would step up and say something, even if it meant that I was going to set myself apart from the crowd, or be the drag that doesn't want to have fun. I don't care. I don't want to put anybody's life at stake. Same thing with sexual assault. That's as far away from me as humanly possible, because especially now I have 2 daughters. But even back then, I mean, my mom and dad taught me, to respect a woman. And that's how I was. So you really need to, in your mind, you need to be understanding of who you are and how you're going to react if you're ever put in those situations, because how you react is going to determine what your future could hold. Because if something were to happen with that group, your life, even though you're not the one driving, your life may still be impacted.
Oh, yeah.
And so you really have to protect yourself on that.
And I wasn't planning on going down this road or certainly giving examples, but just so people understand that are listening how negatively this can impact your life, even something as simple as underage drinking, right, and getting caught. That's a conviction on your record. It can cause you to lose scholarships. Some schools have honor codes that would violate and get you in trouble and things like that. Something more serious like drinking and driving, it suspends your license. The insurance, especially as a young person, the insurance you have to pay is several $1,000s a year, SR22 insurance. You have to go through a court proceeding to get your license administratively reinstated. By the time it's all said and done, the average cost of getting a DUI is, if you get your license reinstated and you do all those things and pay the insurance, just first year is well over $10,000, and then your insurance premium is ridiculous for several more years.
Yeah.
Then you get to the more serious stuff. I told you I was involved in prosecuting a number of sexual assaults, and I was involved in investigating, I would say, at least 20 or 30 sexual assault cases. And the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them were scenarios where it was a he said, she said situation. Two people were drinking and put themselves in a situation where nothing good came out of it, right? People's lives were upended on both sides forever. Regardless of malicious intent, what happened destroyed lives. And I know that's not a sunny or rosy thing to bring up in an episode like this, especially when you're talking about something that, like we said, can be an amazing experience for the rest of your life.
But it's something you have to consider, though.
Yeah. I mean, the advice is maturity, right? Be aware that these things happen. Be aware that these things exist. Be aware that it can happen. And then you can plan and put yourself in the best scenario to enjoy yourself, to have all that fun, to do all the wild and crazy things, right? You know, don't get a tattoo. Those are permanent, right?
Yeah, no,
if you're going to get a tattoo, spend some time, plan that ahead of time. It shouldn't be a drunken decision during a spring break trip, right? But that, you know, I'm not telling you not to do something you can make a decision as an adult, but just make sure you're planning things. And just like that, for all the negative things that can occur during a wild and debaucherous week, right, on spring break, as long as you understand the dangers, as long as you plan for what you're going to do, as long as you look for others to support you and be there for you, and you look after them and look after each other, you can do these things, have a ton of fun, not get in any trouble, not cause any harm, and they'll be some of the most memorable experiences of your life for a good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I will say, you know, this is not a disadvantage of spring break, but more or less the disadvantage of the times that we're in for spring break. And that is, when I was going through spring break, you know, I did not have to worry about somebody having their cell phone out. Like cell phone cameras now are so, you know, they're just so predominant that at any point in time, somebody's videoing something. And we never had to worry about that. Now, granted, like I said, I was around people that I didn't have to worry about doing anything stupid anyway. That was just not my style. I just wanted to go have fun. But you do have to be mindful of that too.
Sure. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because honestly, I had thought about it initially and it slipped my mind because we went, you know, down other paths. But yeah, whatever you do is likely going to be recorded. And it's not going to be recorded by you. It's not going to be you sharing it with someone else. It's going to be others
it's typically
sharing it.
Not recorded because you're just having a happy-go-lucky time.
No. And they record the positive and the negative. And
cut out the positive.
Yeah. People just want a reaction from others. They post it on social media, and then all of a sudden it's out there forever, right? People copy it, and it's going to follow you, right? So just understand that your life, you know, there was this quotation by Elliot Spitzer, which is so funny that it was by him, because he got in trouble for, you know, visiting houses of ill repute. But that being said, when he was Attorney General in the, I think, Eastern District of New York, he said, never say anything or write anything down that you wouldn't mind if they published it on the front page of the newspaper.
Yeah, right? That's a good way to live life.
Right. I mean, people will understand you're going to have fun and you're going to do wild and crazy things, but make sure it's the kind of thing that people would look at and say, oh, that's just somebody having fun, having a good time. Don't do things or keep yourself measured away from doing things that if somebody recorded it, that it would honestly be an embarrassment or a stain on your reputation for a long time. Even if it shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
If it would bother you, be aware of that. Be aware of the things that may not bother you, but could affect you negatively, right? Because those could be things to avoid as well.
Yeah. Well, really quickly, so we're going to do two more questions. What's one bit of advice that you could give to the listeners about getting the most out of that week of spring break?
Gauge yourself and try to understand what you need as a person. Do you need rest? Do you need that experience for life, personal fulfillment? Do you need time to catch up? Do you need to make more money? What do you need? Do you understand what you need in yourself? Like we've said so many times, that's the starting point for all your decision making. Understanding yourself and what you need, then you can make a good decision. You'll get the most out of it. What do you say, AJ?
I'm going to go with something like that as well, where you're just trying, like, again, the question asks how to get the most out of the week. And I would say, understand what your motivations are, but do it within your means. don't just go crazy spending all this money on stuff if it's outside of your means. If you saved up for it, that's fine. But the financial side of spring break can be just as devastating as the social side of it, depending on what you do. And you could look back and go, yeah, that was a fun time, but I did not need to spend 10 grand. And if you stay within your means, that means that you're going to have a satisfying week during spring break, and then you'll look back at it and still be satisfied that you didn't, just throw money away that you didn't have. And so I would say, have fun, but stay within your means.
That's great advice.
Last one, and this one you can give one or two if you want to, if you've got one or two or more. I'm sure we probably have a lot more. But what's some things not to do on spring break?
I've thrown out a couple already. No tattoos.
Yeah, no tattoos, yeah.
No violating the law, particularly blatantly in a way that could be something more than just, hey, wag of the finger, don't do that, right? And don't lose control, right?
Yeah.
Keep control of your environment. It's too easy to lose control. Drinking too much will do it. Being too intoxicated, putting yourself around people you don't trust.
I'd say peer pressure was a good one.
Well, all of those things can lead to really negative situations. And right. And 3, this is maybe not a don't do. This is just be cautious that everybody has a cell phone.
Yep.
And those are good cameras now. They catch everything. Yeah.
Well, you pretty much hit all the high notes on that one because those are the biggest. Because again, spring break. If the purpose of spring break to you is to have fun, then have fun, but just do it in a smart way. Don't do something stupid that you're going to regret, or you're going to look back, regret, and think that was just, I shouldn't have done that, and it's going to affect my future in a negative way. So yeah, I would agree with those. Well, that was a good episode. Now I want to go to spring break again. We should have spring break for like adults.
Yeah, they probably do. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Well, we're all too sore, and we don't wake up at we don't go to bed until 8 o'clock at night, and so there's no staying up late.
Oh yeah, I have more than one cocktail or something like that. Now I have a headache the next day. I don't know
exactly.
I don't know how I would be able to handle a week of spring break.
I would say spring break now would be a lot cheaper.
Oh, it would. Yeah. The hotel room might have to be a little more expensive, but the rest of it, yeah.
Well, that's been a great show. I enjoyed it, and we love talking about some of the fun stuff. Jason, before we wrap it up, do you have any words to say before we head out?
Just remind people of the same thing I remind you at the end of every episode. We want to hear from you guys. Reach out to us. We're going to talk about the things that you want us to talk about. So,
awesome. Well, until next time, we hope to see you there. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.